Hi, my name is Lizzie, and I run a small art business called Rare Press. And today I'm going to show you how to make a simple block print using Speedball art supplies. So here's what we need to get started. A couple sheets of paper, a block of Speedy Carve rubber from Speedball. It's a really easy to carve rubber. A carving tool as well, very important. This carving tool has the gouges hidden in the handle, which is very handy. And you will find a couple of different sizes in here, ranging from very small, very fine, to quite large to carve away larger areas. You'll need a pencil. This one is a 5B, which means it's a really soft lead, so the softer the better. It's great for transferring our image to our rubber. An eraser might be handy if you make mistakes like I do. And then you'll need some sort of cutting tool. Here I have a box cutter, an X-Acto knife, and a pair of scissors. You'll just need something to cut with. So we'll start by cutting open our rubber. I'll use my handy tool here to cut mine open. And you'll notice that the sheets of paper that I have cut here are 4x6 to match the rubber. So when I'm sketching, I know exactly how much space I have to work with on my rubber. So that I use that trick whenever I carve. So you can see they match right up, perfect match, and you can either create a large stamp or multiple small stamps from this block, which is great. It doesn't look that big, but you can get a lot out of it. So now it's time to start sketching, and what I usually do at this stage is sketch my design really light with my soft lead pencil, and then once I have the design set in stone and I'm really happy with it, I go over my lines really dark as I can with the pencil. And because we're using this really soft lead, this 5B pencil, our image will transfer really well to the rubber, which means that our design will be easier to carve because the outlines will be really clear. So sketch lightly, think about what you want, erase at this point, change it up, use your scratch paper, do whatever you like here, and then once you're happy with it, I'm happy with it now, I go in and I go so dark. And these pencils are so nice because it almost looks like you're using a pen, that's how dark they are. So you go in, going over all my outlines, and I'm thinking at this point about which parts do I want to be dark in my printed, and which parts do I want to stay empty or white on my paper. So this is a positive versus negative sort of conundrum that you go through every time you make a print. You have to think about which parts you want to be in the print and which parts you want to be carved away. And sometimes if you're confused about it, you can actually use your pencil to just sketch the areas that you want to keep dark, and then you'll be able to carve away the rest. So at this point in my sketching process, I'm thinking about that positive, negative, and then I'm also realizing that I want to add more details. So before you start carving, look at your drawing, think about if there's anything missing, if you want to change anything up, and just remember that after we transfer the image to the rubber, you still have time to add in more details or take things away. Nothing is set in stone until it's literally set in rubber, so you can edit as much as you want until the carving begins and even after. Just know that once you carve something away, you can't bring it back. Just like giving yourself a haircut, you gotta stop before it's too short, before you're bald. Okay, so I have my image ready, and here's the fun part. We flip our image over, we grab our carving tool, but we want the handle end this time. We don't want the carving end. We take this nice rounded surface and we use it to sort of transfer our image to the rubber. And it's really important here that you're holding onto your paper as much as you can. You don't want any wiggling. You don't want your paper to move around because your image will get smudged. And so you can see that I'm sort of peeling it up to see how the transfer is going. You can do that periodically through this process. Looks like it's going well. The image is coming through just fine. And I am now ready to take off my paper. The great thing about this rubber is that you can go over it directly with your pencil. So if you see some areas that are a little bit light and you want to darken them up, go for it. You can also create your image directly on the rubber without doing anything on paper. Just be aware that your image will be reversed once you print it. So if you were to include text, your image would be reversed and your text would be unreadable. So keep that in mind. So it looks like here I'm ready to go. I'm going to grab my number 1 gouge, which is the smallest gouge in this set. I'm going to loosen the top of my carving tool, insert the gouge, and tighten it. This part's a little tricky, but you don't want any of the silver pieces to to fall out, to come open. So all you want to do is just loosen it. You don't want to open it altogether. So for me, the number 1 gouge is great for outlining. I use this tool when I'm doing my very first cuts around the image. I'm kind of like giving myself a guideline for where to carve next. So this little number 1 tool is kind of my starting point when I'm carving. So if you included a lot of small details in your drawing like I did, just remember to take it slow. Remember that each cut you make will show up in the final image. So I have this tendency of cutting away nostrils when I carve faces like this, and I just have to remember to take it slow and follow the lines that I gave myself, and don't freestyle too much. And this really shows the importance of having your guidelines and your pencil lines be really strong and really clear, so that when you're carving, you know exactly where to carve and where not to carve. So now I'm taking out the gouge number 1, the smallest gouge, and I'm putting in number 5, which is probably my favorite. It's the biggest one in this set, and the smooth, the rounded end goes in. Tighten it up. You can see it's got kind of a scoop shape, which is really nice for carving away bigger chunks. This is so satisfying. This is my favorite part. And the number 5 for me is great for carving away those areas that I've outlined for myself. So you can see that I use the number 1 to outline the drawing, and then the number 5 is like kind of the excavator. It takes away all the excess that you don't need. Now, if you're noticing that you didn't use up your whole block and you want to either cut some off just to save yourself the trouble of carving, or if you want to cut it off and you can maybe use it for another little stamp later, this is a great time to do that. You can get your X-Acto knife, your scissors, whatever you have. The scissors cut right through it easily, and then just cut off those pieces. Now at this point, I really like to do a little test where I've not carved everything away, but I'm not sure exactly what I have left to carve. All the details are kind of blending together. So I grab a black stamp pad and just give the whole surface a little coverage, and then I can really see exactly where I need to carve. I can see I need to carve there and there and there. And then to kind of get your piece to not smudge all over your hands, you can just give it a tiny test print on some scratch paper. You might want to use both sides. This stamp pad dries instantly, so you can do a test print and it will not stay wet, which is great. You can see all the spots I need to still carve away. I'm going to just get rid of that excess ink by dabbing it on here. And then your stamp is sort of stained black, so you have this sort of contrast, which is really, really helpful for getting all those last little bits, just like these. So again, I always find details to add at the end, and if you're noticing that your block is a little sparse or you just want to add a little flair to it, you can do so now. I'm just adding a couple little sort of notches in the flowers, and I am ready to print. You can see I missed a little spot there on the blossoms, but that's okay. You can always fix it later. So we have our paper, we have our block, of course. I have a piece of plastic here to use as a palette. You can use whatever you've got. Palette knife for spreading ink. We've got our water-based Speedball ink. I chose blue because it's my favorite. And then we have a little roller here, a little brayer. And then this is totally optional. It's called a baron. It's for getting even pressure on your block for pushing down. You don't need it. It's just totally optional. So here's our blue ink. We just need a little blob. We don't need a lot to start. Close it up, and we're gonna just take a little bit of the ink and spread it down, and then we can always get more from our original little blob if we need it. So the trick here is to roll out your ink and to completely cover the brayer in ink. And you kind of want a little bit of a Velcro sound. So you want to move the brayer in both directions. You want to really spread it out, and you want it to be kind of shiny, but not too thick. It takes a little practice to get it right, but you'll get it right. You can see it has a little bit of shine there. And then we just apply, and we do a nice thin layer. It's much better to do multiple thin layers than one thick layer. If you do a thick layer, your print is just going to be really smudgy and it's not going to look great. So you want to start thin, and then you can build up from there. You can also get something that's called ink retarder if your ink is drying out on your palette, and Speedball sells it, and it's really great to use if you're doing a lot of prints and you notice that your ink is drying out quickly. So now our block is almost completely covered in blue ink. It's looking really good and vibrant. This is our first print of this block, so the first one is always a gamble. You gotta see how it works, and then you can adjust from there. So all we do, we get our paper, any kind of paper will do. We push down with our fingertips. I'm gonna use my baron here. Just a little gentle pressure to get it all even all across. You wanna make sure you put the same amount of pressure on every portion of your block to ensure a quality print. And then here comes the peel, the best part. Here it is. Not bad. So I hope you liked this tutorial. It was really fun to film, and block printing is just my true love. So I hope you give it a shot, and let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!